Hello and welcome back to another edition of Viper Bites, and we are going to go take a look at some starts and sits for week number 11. But before we do, make sure to take a few seconds there. If you're watching us on the YouTube there on the Vipers Network, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that like button. Let's bump that algorithm a little bit higher. Get that SEO pump in there. I have no clue what I just said, but I hear all the cool kids say it. So let's make sure we follow suit there. Also, if you're listening to us on podcast form, regardless of the platform, whether that be Apple or Spotify or Anchor or any of the other many ones that you'll find our show on, make sure to rate and review us. Make sure to take a few seconds there. We greatly appreciate that. And if you've got questions, we've got answers. You can either drop them right here on the Vipers Network YouTube channel, right in the comments section, or hit me up on Twitter at Matt Donnelly FF, and I will get those questions answered as soon as possible. Without further ado, let's head to week number 11. And we've got two teams on bye this week. We've got the Los Angeles Rams. So that's your Matt Stafford, your Odell Beckham Jr., tongue-in-cheek, your Cooper Kupp, your Darrell Henderson, your Tyler Higbee. We've got the Broncos there. We've got Teddy Bridgewater if you're in two QB leagues. We've got Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, who's been a pleasant surprise. Cortland Sutton, not so much the last 3 weeks. Anyway, we need to find a way to replace Matt Stafford, and I've got three options for you this week, starting off with Cam Newton versus Washington. You know what? First week back, fire him up. Let's look at this. He literally outscored Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers last week in only 8 snaps. Okay, all kidding aside, Washington is allowing 42.17 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position on the season, and they have just lost their defensive leader there. Chase Young, all that edge pressure, all that time and space that Cam Newton, he's going to have it this week, as opposed to maybe if Chase Young was in the lineup, he's going to have some time and space to make some things happen there. Young was lost with an ACL injury. He's done for the year. Now imagine Superman. He has Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Brady. It's like the casting call for the new Justice League movie. Book it, Cam Newton, put him in your lineup. Now, another quarterback you can trust this week is Ryan Tannehill versus Houston. The QB 11 on the season gets the 9th most generous defense against quarterbacks in the Houston Texans. Houston has allowed 2,374 passing yards on the season and 20 total touchdowns, 4 of which came by the ground at the quarterback position. Now, we all know that Ryan Tannehill, he's not afraid to tuck and run, especially near the goal line, and especially in the absence of one Derrick Henry. Book Tannehill for a big week this week. Now, another quarterback I'm looking at is Mac McCorkle Jones versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons got plucked last week by the Dallas Cowboys, and it seems as though you can pretty much start everyone and anyone against this Falcons defense, and that means Mac Jones and a few of his friends, which we'll touch on a little bit later there, fire them up. Mac Jones, he is finding his groove on the fantasy streets. He is the fantasy football quarterback number 10 since week 7, scoring just over 60 points. There's nothing flashy about what he does. He is consistent, and he's making the most of the opportunities presented to him. And Atlanta has a very good way of allowing good presentation for a quarterback position. Heck, I think he's got 7.4% of the time he's throwing the ball for completions or throwing the ball together. They're for touchdowns. Mac Jones, I like you this week. Now, two quarterbacks that I'm not too big on. One is actually in this New England and Atlanta matchup. It is the quarterback opposite of Mac Jones, and that is Matt Ryan versus the Patriots. Now, last week, all they could do was score 3 points to a very porous Dallas defense. On top of that, you've got Calvin Ridley. He's missing time, and there's a strong possibility that Cordero Patterson is going to miss this one as well with an ankle injury, thus allowing Bill Belichick to focus all that evil genius onto that defensive game plan to stop Kyle Pitts this week. Now, I see this one playing out very similar to what last week happened there. I see Matt Ryan finishing with less than 200 yards passing against a New England Patriots defense that is third in points allowed to the quarterback position over the last 4 weeks, allowing only 22.73. It's not looking good for you out there, Matty. Now, another quarterback is Kirk Cousins versus Green Bay. I don't like this one. It makes my tummy turn, whatever you want to say. On one hand, Kirk Cousins has been a top 10 quarterback for fantasy all season, excluding primetime matchups, of course. And on the other hand, you got Green Bay, who's allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks on the season and only allowing 2,210 passing yards, which is the 8th fewest in the league. And they still haven't had their bye week. Advantage, Packers, secondary. I know you can take advantage of it a little bit, but I'm telling you what, I like the Packers D in this one. Now, heading over to the running back position, we know you're firing up Jonathan Taylor. More on that a little bit later. Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, if healthy, and Austin Eckler. Now, side note, I'm not starting this player this week, but it appears that Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be returning this week. So keep an eye on that as well. Now, 3 running backs that I feel comfortable starting with the Green Bay Packers, beast from the East, whatever you want to call him there, from Boston College, A.J. Dillon versus Minnesota. Minnesota is allowing the 11th most fantasy points to running backs, and there is no one, and I mean no one in the Packers backfield that is going to take touches away from A.J. Dillon, except maybe Aaron Rodgers if he decides to sling it around the field. That being said, A.J. Dillon is better in passing situations than you may give him credit for. He has just under 200 receiving yards so far this season, as well as a receiving touchdown. I would expect the Packers to wear down the Vikings with a little bit of help with the quad father, Quadzilla, A.J. Dillon leading the way. Yes, it's a 3-in-1 deal when we're talking about A.J. Dillon and his thighs. Now, another running back I'm looking at here, heading to the Miami Dolphins backfield, Myles Gaskin versus the New York Football Jets. The carries, they have been there. The production, not so much for the primary ball carrier in South Beach. Now, that changes this week. Gaskins has 34 carries, 8 targets in the last 2 weeks, and the Jets happen to be the worst when it comes to defending opposing running backs. I mean, think of something bad and then add Odell Beckham Jr. to it. That's how bad this Jets defense has been to opposing running backs. Now, the Jets are allowing 9. I'll repeat that. 9 more fantasy points per game than any other team. That's 39.14 per contest. They've also allowed 65% of the touchdown score on them to come against the running back position. Now, you look at how that's been done. 17 touchdowns by ground, 3 more in the passing game. That is 4 more touchdowns total than the next closest team, which happens to be the Detroit Lions. They also rank 3rd worst, 3rd best, wherever you want to say it, in allowing rushing and receiving yards in both categories. 2 separate categories, okay? Fire up Myles Gaskin. Now, I want to give you a dynamic duo here to start in your backfield. Heading back to that Atlanta matchup against the New England Patriots, that's Damian Harris, if healthy. Keep an eye on that injury report. And Ramondre Stevenson. Now, everyone's going to knock Ramondre Stevenson if Harris is playing. He's only going down to a flex. You're still going to be able to trust him in your lineup. Damian Harris still gives you that RB1, RB2 kind of player that you can throw in there each and every week. Now, this is going to be a game script type play here. The Atlanta Falcons have allowed 11 touchdowns to backs this season and are 30th in the league when it comes to stopping running backs from producing on a weekly basis, okay? Harris has done enough this season to maintain his job. Meanwhile, Stevenson has performed well enough to earn more run as the season goes on. Fire them both up. Now, the one matchup, I talked about Jonathan Taylor. He's a must start each and every week. You're going to fire him up. You're going to put him in your lineup. Temper those expectations just a little bit because Taylor gets to go against the number 1 ranked fantasy defense against running backs in the Buffalo Bills. So that's something there. I'm still comfortable starting him. Who I'm not comfortable starting, same matchup, Zach Moss versus the Colts. Listen, I've learned 2 things growing up. You don't go chasing waterfalls, and you don't go chasing fantasy points, both engaging in the pursuit of self-destructive ambitions. Moss scored last week, but he only had 27 yards on the day. Just don't. Besides that, the Colts are the number 2 run defense against fantasy running backs. Now, another guy I'm going to throw in here, Elijah Mitchell versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chances of me benching him are always going to be pretty low. He's one of my guys. I can't do it. But that said, he just had surgery on his fractured finger, so his status is very much in doubt for this contest. And honestly, there's a good chance the 49ers don't even need him in Duval County this week. Heading over to the wide receiver position, you know you're firing up Devontae Adams when he's in there. You know you're firing up Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. These are guys you're trusting each and every week. Thank God Diggs has got things going for him again. Cooper Kupp, when he's not on bye week, he's in your lineup. Here are 3 more guys you could pump in there to replace the likes of Cooper Kupp and the guys like that. So you got Rashad Bateman versus Chicago. I am going to keep yelling his name until all y'all hear what I'm saying. The Bateman is coming. Nearly 20% of the time that Rashad Bateman is out there running routes, he is getting targeted by Lamar Jackson. He is a rookie with 4 career games under his belt. Since being inserted into the lineup, Bateman is second on the team in receiving yards with 241, and he has seen 6 or more targets in every game this season that he's played in, with a personal best 8 last week to go along with a team high 80 yards. Did I mention the Bears are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, allowing 39.76 per contest, and they've allowed 17 different wide receivers to score double-digit points on the season. Yeah. Fire up Rashad Bateman. Do it right now. He's a must start. Now, I want to give you another dynamic duo. I gave you Damian Harris and I gave you Ramondre Stevenson a little bit earlier. I'm going to stick with the Patriots and I'm going to keep on piling on when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. And don't worry, I'm not done yet with the Falcons yet. Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers versus Atlanta. Listen, you have to be able to either be good in coverage or good at pressuring the quarterback, preferably both. But if you're neither, you're basically the Atlanta Falcons because you can't stop either one of those things from happening. You can't get pressure on the quarterback, and you're not good in coverage. Not a good formula for stopping teams from passing on you. Now, they basically rank at the bottom in both those categories, and now Jacoby Myers has a taste for the end zone after last week, finally getting off the skid there when that comes down to lack of touchdown production from the big guy there. Now, the only thing that could possibly stop this dynamic duo in the receiving game is if this game gets out of hand and we end up with a negative game script that turns heavy run very early. Now, another wide receiver I'm firing up this week, Brandon Cooks versus Tennessee. Houston, you have a problem, and it's the Titans' ability to cover receivers. Now, Tennessee is allowing a league high 46.08 fantasy points per game this year to wide receivers. And last time that Tyrod Taylor and Brandon Cooks got together just before the bye week, Taylor targeted Cooks 13 times. That outing didn't go quite as well as what Taylor had planned in his first game back, but given the extra time and the bye week, they have some opportunities to get back on that same page, and Cook is about to live in the Titans secondary this week. Besides, what else is Houston going to do? They're going to need to be throwing in this one. It's the way it's going to work out. Now, 2 wide receivers I'm not trusting this week. One, because I just refuse to, and the other one, it actually kind of hurts. But first, we're going to start with Jarvis Landry versus Detroit. Yes, you start all your offensive players against the Lions. Not so fast, as Lee Corso would say. Now, Detroit usually finds themselves trailing, thus, teams rely heavily on the running game. They abandon the passing game because they're running out the clock, et cetera, et cetera. The Lions are allowing the 13th fewest points against receivers so far this year. And Landry, on top of that, he's basically worn an invisible cloak all season, failing to record double-digit fantasy points in every game this season, except the one in week 1 against, I believe it was the Kansas City Chiefs. His quarterbacks now are either an injured Baker Mayfield, who is apparently staying in the stadium. I'm not even sure if he's paying rent there, to be honest with you, or Case Keenum. Need I say more? No, I don't. Now, the one that does hurt, it really touches me personally because I'm really riding high on him. I'm all aboard Michael Pittman, except against Buffalo this week. It's not you, Michael. It's the Bills' defense. I love you, Michael Pittman. I do. I'm going to refer to you as Michael Pittman as long as I keep doing this little bit here. But I have a very strong rule about not starting wide receivers going against the Buffalo Bills. I have that rule, and you should have that rule as well. Now, the Bills are only allowing 26.8 fantasy points per game this season to wide receivers, which happens to be tops in the NFL, as well as they're topping the NFL in 1,122 yards against at the receiver position, and they've only surrendered 3 touchdowns to wideouts, which is also tops in the league. Now, heading over to the tight end position, you're firing up Travis Kelsey, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Gronk. If he's back, you're putting him in that lineup. Usually I would say Kyle Pitts. More on that shortly. But first, I want to pile on the Atlanta Falcons a little bit more and talk about Hunter Henry. Now, while Atlanta has been okay against tight ends, ranking somewhere around the 15th in the league, allowing about 12.18 fantasy points per contest to the position, Henry comes into this one finishing as a top 12 tight end in 6 of the last 7 contests, and he has scored 7 touchdowns over those 7 games. Now, that has propelled him all the way up to tight end 4 status, and he trails only the likes of Travis Kelsey, Mark Andrews, and Mike Gesicki, while averaging 10.8 fantasy points per game. You're riding the hot hand. You're riding Hunter Henry. Another hot hand I'm riding, not particular is the tight end, but the defense in which he's going against. I am firing up CJ Uzomah versus the Las Vegas Raiders. We know Vegas isn't good at defending tight ends. It's been that way for a few years, a lot of years. Too many to count, to be honest with you. Now, Travis Kelsey, once again, did a number on him last week, posted another 100-plus yards, and I would expect Uzomah to have similar success this week. Now, the Raiders have allowed 655 yards and 6 touchdowns to the position, and only the Philadelphia Eagles have proven to be worse this year than the Raiders when it comes to defending tight ends. Now, add in the fact that Vegas has been solid against wide receivers this year. You think Burrow will be looking to take advantage and exploit the tight end matchup this week. Another tight end I feel really good about this week is Pat Friar versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Hey, listen, I wanted to throw in Cole Kmet here. He's got a great matchup against the Ravens, but Friar, he has been performing well, and he draws the Chargers this week, who have also allowed 6 touchdowns, and along as well as 583 yards in receiving. And you know what? They're also the number 5 ranked team with fantasy points per game allowed, surrendering 16.56 per game. And since week 6, Fairmouth is tight end 6. And on top of that, he's actually the top tight end in fantasy going back to week 8. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So fire up Pat Fairmouth. Now, 2 guys I'm going to temper my expectations on and absolutely flat out refuse to play. Starting off with the flat out option, Evan Ingram versus Tampa Bay. You're starting to trust him again, aren't you? Don't. It is a trap. I'm telling you right now, we have seen this movie before, and like Pete Townsend most famously put it, we don't get fooled again. Back-to-back weeks with scores, but the Giants' reinforcements are coming. Saquon Barkley looks like he's going to be ready to go. Sterling Shepard, he's ready to go for a solid 3/4 of a game before he blows up the other hamstring. Listen, prior to the bye week, Kenny Golladay, he returned. Kadarius Toney, he's going to be cutting into these Evan Ingram targets and opportunities. And for Ingram, these opportunities are going to be farther and fewer in between than ever before. Just don't with Evan Ingram. We know how this plays out. Now, the one that kind of brings a tear to my eye, and now it really does feel like I'm piling on Atlanta, probably because I am, Kyle Pitts versus New England. I know you won't do it. You have to be absolutely crazy to bench Kyle Pitts. But you know what? I've been kind of local, known to be a little bit local from time to time, and I am strongly considering this. Hey, I am not hating on Pitts. In fact, I was looking at the facts really deep here. Bill Belichick, we know this for a fact. He looks to take away the best option away on the offense. And if Cordell Patterson, he is out for sure, you can bet your bottom dollar if Kyle Pitts wasn't the top primary option there for Bill Belichick to shut down, he is certainly that now. Number 2, New England is allowing the second fewest points per game to the tight end position and have only yielded 295 yards. I'm hoping I'm wrong here, but this strongly feels like advantage Belichick. Now, when we take a little bit deeper look into things, you want to know where these numbers are coming from? Head over to fantasypoints.com, enter promo code 21Vipers10, get 10% off your subscription. I'm telling you what, one-stop shop for everything. You need it, you want it. It's basically your fantasy football on steroids when it comes to analytics and information. So head over to fantasypoints.com. And you know what? The Vipercast is coming strong. Every Tuesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to check that out. Till then, we'll catch you next time. Take care.